Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we will be continuing our discussion on the Western philosophy, where we last ended it with Aristotle. So, what we will be discussing today is the Hellenistic philosophy and the philosophy that emerged in the Hellenistic Age. These two things. They and to understand the full scope of this, we will be covering the history from 4th century BC to 10th century AD. So yeah, we will be covering 14 centuries worth of history right now. So I guess you should just sit back and hopefully you have some time on your hand because this is going to be a bit long. But as always, if you are crunched for time, what I would suggest is you can go through the description. It will touch upon all the 5, 6 major philosophies that emerged during that time, and what books or material or podcast or even online links which I found to refer to them to understand these 5, 6 philosophy. That can also be done. But if you do have time, I would say to just sit and listen to me drone about the story because this will give you the whole context as to how these philosophies emerged, what was the impact of this philosophy, because we need that context, as always, we need that context to move forward, to move into the next video. So, without any further delay, I'll begin. So, starting from Aristotle, where we left last time, towards the 4th century BC, he is at the peak of his power, peak of his philosophic career, I would say. His Nicomachean ethics and politics are being read by people and are being adopted. They are taken seriously. Meanwhile, he also gets the opportunity to become the teacher of a 12-year-old who, who in a couple of decades would be the ruling one of the largest kingdoms that the world had seen at the time. Starting from Greece, moving all the way east towards Persia and even parts of northern India, the current day, the modern day Punjab. And as you guessed, that king was Alexander the Great. So Aristotle got the chance to inculcate all the virtues and the thought process that he had, how a philosopher king should be. He got the chance to inculcate that in Alexander. And I feel that he succeeded also up to a good degree. But unfortunately, Alexander passes away at the very, very young age of 32 because his kingdom was so huge and he died without an heir. His death created a very, very huge power vacuum. And the consequence of that was all the small states who were under his kingdom, they went to war. Everyone, it was a race for the throne. And the direct impact of this was the suffering for the common folk, which lasted a very, very long time. So, the philosophy that emerged during this time was, I feel, a direct translation of the mental state that the people were in at that time. The 4 philosophies that emerged were Epicureanism, Stoicism, Cynicism, and Skepticism. So, giving a very one-liner brief about it, Epicurean, there is a group of people who says that I do not believe that the point of life is to go through this war, to suffer so much. God has put us in this on this earth not to suffer and wait around for this war, but rather to seek happiness. That is the end outcome of human beings, to seek happiness, and that's what I'm gonna do. That was Epicureanism. Stoicism was completely based on human virtues. So you have been dealt this card in your life. How are you going to take it? How are you going to take your life forward? What virtues are you going to, imbibe yourself with so that you can still lead a good life, you can still do what's right and not harm other people. That was Stoicism. You deal with the situation and you move forward. Cynicism, cynicism and skepticism has gotten a very bad negative rap, but I feel it was people. It was this even these two philosophies was people trying to deal with the situation that they were in. Uh, one group of people were not ready to see either good or bad in any situation. For them, it was like, so what, the war is going on, something worse could have been going on, or so what, the war is ending. That does not guarantee my happiness, right? So that's cynicism. I mean, these two follow. I mean, fall under the purview of this. But I will not do a shoddy job of describing these philosophies in detail. I will let you listen to the podcast, read the books, and a couple of three books that I'll be mentioning about Stoicism over a period of time. If you read those books, you'll understand more about these philosophies, and you will get to make your own understanding or make your own insights from these. So these were the four philosophies that emerged during this time. This is happening over a period of two centuries, like around third century and second century. Another thing that happened was for over a period of 200 years, since Aristotle had, started moving away from the Socratic method, people were putting more of his trust, more of their trust in Aristotle. They were following the philosophy which is backed by science, by scientific development. But now that people are in this situation, science is not going to cut it for them. They need an escape, or at least some reason to justify the situation that they're in. What happens is that they start coming back to the Socratic method. They start coming back to the Platonic philosophy. And this re-emergence of the Platonic philosophy is the Hellenistic philosophy that we're going to talk about today. So, Middle Platonism emerged during this time, and the Plato's Timaeus, which talks about, if you have read it, which talks about the creation of the world. Philo takes this concept of the creation of world, which is in Timaeus, and gives it a creator. Like, the creation of the world happened because someone created it, and that creator, according to Philo, gets the status of one supreme being. So earlier, before this, the concept of God, which was based on a particular element of nature that these gods could manipulate, let's say Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Aphrodite. All of these gods represented or controlled a portion of nature. None of the powers or concept of God was unified. But with the Middle Platonism, and because of Philo, who was the founder of Middle Platonism, the concept of one supreme being was emerging and holding ground. People were starting to believe in this one God concept, and this is an important shift in ideology. Why? Because you'll get to know. But please keep in mind that the concept of one supreme being is here. It's here in Greece now, and this is somewhere around. This is somewhere around. From first century BC to first century AD. That is when Middle Platonism emerged. So, along with this, something else is happening in a very nearby place. Somewhere very close to Greece, a lot of things are happening. So let's direct our attention there very briefly. Actually, it cannot be brief, it's going to be long. So, Rome. Uh, I want you to imagine in your mind the geographical map of Mediterranean Sea and all the important port cities that surround this sea, which is one that we already have been talking about is Athens, another is Greece, another is Rome, then third would be Carthage, and similarly Alexandria and all the other port cities. Why this is important? Because all the trade that is happening, these are situated in these cities, and trade is a very big contributor for good economy. If you are in a port city, as we have seen all throughout history, these cities are really rich, and that's what happens in case of Rome as well. Around 5th century BC, Rome used to be just a republic, but it starts annexing nearby states, nearby important cities as well. While it is doing that, it is sucking her own citizens dry. The common citizens of Rome are struggling. Why? Because farmers are being forced to produce more food crop. Workmen are being forced to make more weapons. Taxes are being levied to make all of these things happen. So the commoners are really suffering by now. And this is creating a huge rift between the common people and the ruling class. The ruling class is getting richer and richer because of all of these captures that are happening of the neighboring cities, because they are getting all the spoils of the war, whereas the commoners are suffering. So this rift keeps on increasing over time. It reaches a point, the might of Roman Republic reaches a point where it even destroys Carthage somewhere in the middle of the second century BC. And soon after that, around 140 or 130 BC, even Greece is captured. That is another historic moment that's important, because once Greece is captured, philosophy is here. The Greek philosophy is now in Rome. People are aware of all the philosophies that Socrates, Plato, Aristotle had built, and it is here to stay. So, and this time, from the time where Alexander passed away in 322 BC till 146 BC, this is the period that is known as the Hellenistic Age. Yeah. And the philosophies that we had been talking about, that was the Hellenistic philosophy. Hellenistic philosophy is not confined to the Hellenistic age. Rather, all the philosophies that come from Plato or Socrates, that is called the Hellenistic philosophy. So it is still going on in our narrative. It hasn't stopped. Okay, so by now, Greece is also a part of Rome. So from here on, whatever we will be talking about, it will be all-inclusive. Greece, Rome, everything, we will be putting them under one umbrella, which is the Roman Republic, or how it becomes the Roman Empire. Okay, so moving forward from here, what happens is that to support all of these rich people, even slave trade becomes very prominent in all of these cities. A lot of slaves are being traded from the northern part of Egypt, from Spain, and these slaves are being brought in to maintain the social standard of the ruling class. One such slave that was born into slavery was Epictetus, and he was a staunch supporter of Stoicism. Imagine, guys, in spite of being born into a situation like this, yet having the courage, the mental strength to follow Stoicism, to be unbothered by the situation that you have been born in, but rather make the best of it and still be courageous, still be virtuous. That shows some strength of character. To understand his writings, I went through the golden sayings of Epictetus. It is an summary of all of his thoughts. Obviously, you are a slave; you will not be given an opportunity to write your own book. Sorry, but his sayings have somehow survived, and they have been put together in this book called Enchiridion, or you can also read the Golden Sayings of Epictetus. I went with the latter because I had free access through Apple Books. But I'll also share the version for Enchiridion that you can refer. So that is the first philosopher in Stoicism that we had to talk about. There are two more that will be coming over a period of time. Why? Because Stoicism lasted a very, very long time. It is prevalent even today, up till, I would say, almost in its original form, which is crazy if you think about it. I mean, 2000 years that philosophy has survived. Anyway, so a couple more philosophers are going to come who are related to Stoicism. So by this time in our story, we are towards the last, say, BC, and the starting of the AD era. So while all of this war is going on, this because of the struggle, the gap, and the turmoil, civil war breaks out in Roman Republic. And who takes advantage of this? The warriors. One such warrior was General Sulla. He dethrones the rulers of the time and becomes the first emperor of the Roman Republic. But very, very soon, he is being overthrown by Julius Caesar. That happened somewhere around 49 AD. So Julius Caesar becomes the dictator, and he declares himself the Maximus Pontiff. Why this is important? Because that means he's not just the political head of the Roman Empire, but he is also the religious head of Roman Empire. In one line, it means he has been given the god status. Now he is being treated as the god of the Roman Empire. Why this is important? Again, because mix this information with the information that we had earlier with the creator, with one supreme being. Before this, the concept of God was not conceivable by everyone. But now that Julius Caesar has become the Maximus Pontiff, you can, and his laws are the laws of God. You have to follow. So the concept of God becomes much more real now. And this brings a very huge shift in the mentality of people around them, right? I mean, a great way to kick you when you're down. Crazy. Okay. But he did not survive as the dictator for very long. As we already know, that by 49 AD, Julius Caesar was assassinated by his group of friends. Et tu, Bruti? Oh. Anyways, yeah. So, while all of this was happening, which is right around 49 AD, somewhere in Judea, which is also under the Roman Empire, in Judea, Jesus Christ has been born, and he is being considered the Son of God, and he has started teaching a new way of life, a new way to look at God to his own people. It's a very small community of Jews who are following Christianity at the time. What happens is one Roman citizen, Paul, he travels to Judea and he takes the teachings from him, and he started spreading it to the non-Jews in the major port cities of the Roman Empire, in places like Rome, and in some parts of Spain. So now very small sect of non-Jews Christian, they are starting to pop up. Okay, these are very small group of people, but they are there. So this is another shift in the story. Why? Because this does not coincide with the concept of Roman emperor being the god, right? And this does not sit with the Roman emperors of that time. What happens? That these sect of people have started being persecuted now. They are being persecuted for not considering the Roman emperor as the god, but they do not stop. And this goes on. One of the worst cases of persecution that happened during the time of Emperor Nero. He had condemned a very, very large group of Christians to be burnt alive. and that's where burnt alive at stakes. I mean the cross shaped stakes, and that's where the whole concept of sacrifice that we have in our mind, that has emerged from there. It actually happened. Horrible stuff. But this does not deter all the Christians. They keep at it. I mean, the population, even though small, it's steadily growing. And these people are still not ready to take part in all those religious activities which confirms Roman emperor as the god. Fast forward to few more years, we reach the time of Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was born into such time where he is seeing all of these persecutions around him, all of the sadness around him, and he turns to Stoicism. His, I mean, I think you know your library or bookcase very well if you can just understand the books by the back of their, not even looking at the spine, but just at this portion of the book. Anyways, so Marcus Aurelius had a habit of maintaining a diary. He used to teach himself to be a Stoic by going through works of Zeno and Epictetus, and he used to write in his diaries what he should be doing to become better. I mean, even though there's so much suffering around him, what he can do to be virtuous, and that's how this whole book has been written. It's literally a diary. He would, while he was on campaigns, while he was in war, whatever little time he could find, he would just jot down his thoughts of the day. And that's how this book came to be. I don't think he ever intended for anyone to read his diaries, because most things that he talks about like he's talking about himself. He berates himself in a lot of things. One such line I'll just read. I mean, I love this one. The first step: don't be anxious. Nature controls it all, and before long you'll be no one, nowhere. Like Hadrian, like Augustus. These are his predecessors. The second step: concentrate on what you have to do. Fix your eyes on it. Remind yourself that your task is to be a good human being. Remind yourself what nature demands of people. Then do it without hesitation. And speak the truth as you see it, but with kindness, with humility, without hypocrisy. I mean, this book is amazing. Look at the cover. The translation is by Gregory Hayes, but look at this beautiful cover. Doesn't it give you, I don't know. I mean, it gives me Westworld vibes and gives me Game of Thrones vibes all rolled into one. I love this cover. And another another philosopher of the time was Seneca. Again, look at this book. It's completely white, but this part is in negatives. It's also a penguin book. And how short it is. The name of the book is On the Shortness of Life. So even this, Seneca was also a senator during that time in the Roman Empire, and these two people were very huge followers of Stoicism. So please give these two books a read. I'll put the name down in the description. Okay, so where were we in the story? Yes, we were around the rule of Marcus Aurelius. So we'll fast forward from there. He did not make any significant changes in his life, Marcus Aurelius, unlike the other folks that I've talked about. But we come to the next one, which is Diocletian. So before this, there is actually not before this, but somewhere around this, I want to mention another Hellenistic philosophy that was famous at the time, that emerged at that time, was Neoplatonism. Now, Neoplatonism was founded by Plotinus, and what this philosophy does is, it, in addition to there being one supreme God, it also gives it the concept of transcendence. So there is now a dualism in God where, just like, let's take the example of Jesus Christ. Okay, so Jesus Christ was a human, his body was a human, but his soul transcended once he died, and he became the God. So something like that. I might not be doing a very good job of explaining this, but I want you to read it. And I mean, this is the crux of it. I mean, the concept of your body being left behind, but your soul transcending and becoming one with the God. So now another thing that gets added to the concept of one supreme being is transcendent. Why all of these are important? Because these are adding up to the crux of Christianity, or to the main basis of Christianity, right? The Holy Trinity. So uh, these concepts, these philosophies, they are slowly changing the mental, what do I say, the thought process of people, right? I mean, because obviously no one lives long enough for 200 years, 300 years. From my forefathers, I would know that there is one supreme being. But when in my time I see that supreme being, I read a book that says that that supreme being has the capability to transcend, and that is the concept I'm going to leave behind for my kids. So by the time my kids are born, they would already be aware of this whole packaged concept of a God who transcends, of a God who suffered a lot. So, and he, by transcendence, he reached that status of Almighty. And we, as the followers of that God, as the followers of those Almighty, will become a part of Him once we die. If we follow if we follow what He did, if we follow in His path, if we suffer the way He has suffered. So that's how the whole philosophy changed, and that's how the mentality changed. And that was the basis for Christianity. And I feel that is the reason why it got such a strong hold in people, because it was all a sort of escape for them. Completely my interpretation. Please tell me if you agree with it or you have some other ideas. But anyways, so yeah, around the time when Diocletian was king, somewhere around that time, Neoplatonism was also born. This the concept of transcendent that I talk about, which was founded by Plotinus. What Diocletian does is, by this time, there are some good numbers of Christians around. Christianity is booming. What is also happening is Roman Empire is expanding. It's expanding like crazy, and it is becoming very hard for one ruler to rule that empire in its entirety. So what he rather does is, he splits the Roman Empire into two: the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. The differences between, and he thought that it will become easier to rule the empire this way. For on the eastern side, the capital becomes Latin-speaking Rome. On the western side, the capital becomes the later on, which is called, is the Constantinople, which is more Greek speaking. I mean, they follow the Greek language this side. So his concept was that if he does that, it will become easier to rule. But rather, what happens is these two empires, they start competing with each other, and the war does not stop. I mean, it does not help, basically. So his successor was Constantinople. His successor was Constantine. Oh my god, kill me. Anyways, so Constantine one day has a dream, and he wakes up and he decides that he's gonna become a Christian now. So he converts to Christianity, and boom. If your emperor is Christian, do you think anyone is gonna go around persecuting Christians now? Hell no. It's a hallelujah moment, guys. It's a hallelujah moment for all the Christians. Anyway, so now Christianity is being tolerated. And over a period of time, another thing that Constantine does is, he makes Christianity the state religion. This was one thing that he did. Another thing was, he's tried to reunite the Eastern and the Western Roman Empire, and he succeeded in doing that for a time period. During the time when it was reunited, he makes Christianity the state religion. So now, not only is the emperor Christian, but the whole state is Christian. It is the state religion now. Now it is heresy to practice any other religion than Christianity. Do you see how the times have changed? I mean, how the world changed for them. So, doesn't this kind of solidifies the fact which was actually mentioned that if you suffer, your suffering will be rewarded? Do you think this translates into that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, now in posterity, this is how I can, if I were interested in converting anyone or showing them, the legitimacy of a word written by we don't know whom in reality, wouldn't this be the story I will tell to convert someone? Maybe, but anyway, so now Christianity is strong. The state religion is Christianity, but what happens is that Roman Empire splits again. Okay, it splits again into Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. Another thing that happens is that Eastern Roman Empire has been raided and taken over by a lot of different neighboring states. One of them were the Turkish army. They have taken over taken over the eastern half of the Roman Empire, and that is the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire. So by 476 AD, Eastern Roman Empire is not there, but Christendom is, and Christendom is there to stay for the next foreseeable future. Anyways, very short brief as to what happens towards the Western Roman Empire is it stays in its original form for the next 1,000 years. Then, in the middle of 14th century, it is taken over by the Ottoman Turks. So for the next 1,000 years, the Western Roman Empire survives, and it survives well. But that is not of our concern today. So in the Eastern Roman Empire, now that it is not a Roman Empire anymore, but it is being taken over by all the raiding armies, Christianity becomes more important in a way, because another thing I missed out on saying was another thing that Constantinople did was make a religious head of the state, and that was the Pope. So Pope is now the religious head of the Eastern Roman Empire. Whatever he says, that is the law when it comes to religion. And even though the Eastern Roman Empire was not there anymore, the Pope was. The bishops were, the archbishops were, and they did anything that they pleased in the name of Christianity. And this is the starting of the early Middle Ages, or also known as the Dark Ages, because from 4th century AD to 10th century AD, for this 600 years of history, the bishops, the Pope, and the archbishops, they had full reign how to manipulate, how to rule the lives of the general people. Everyone had to convert to Christianity to survive. Nothing else was allowed to. And in the name of Lord, they amassed a huge fortune. And all of this context is important for the next period in history that we will be talking about, not today, but in the next installment. That will be the Renaissance. So Renaissance starts somewhere from 11th or 12th century. So all of this thing that happens from 4th to 10th century BC, that all the oppression and the tension and the rules that have been put on people, how it culminates to Renaissance will come up. So this was important for that. And I think with that we have covered the whole 14 centuries that I told I'll be talking about. So to summarize, we talked about the Hellenistic Age from Aristotle, from Alexander's death till the annexation of Greece. We talked about the Hellenistic philosophy, the Middle Platonism, and the Neoplatonism, which were important in heralding the the concept of Christianity, or in solidifying the faith in Christianity, because they changed the concept of God. They changed the concept of God from sky and nature to one being, to one entity. So that was the Hellenistic philosophy. Then we spoke about the rise of the Roman Empire. We spoke about the rise of Christianity. We also spoke about the fall of Rome. So these five concepts were important to understand the next part. And yeah, I mean, this was all I had, I think. If you have stayed till here and hear me, drone about this concept, then thanks a lot for listening. Please tell me in comments if this was useful, or if you just enjoyed me making a lot of silly mistakes. I know I'll be reviewing this video and cringing if I had made any mistakes. So thank you for putting up with that, and do let me know. Bye bye. Take care. See you soon.